You can't even do household chores, so we might as well get a divorce. And you'd better give me your assets too, James said with a smirk as he strolled into my hospital room. I was hooked up to countless machines, but that didn't stop him. A girl I didn't recognize stood by his side. James had no idea I was sitting on $10 million in assets. He should have realized that divorce, in my condition, could be a matter of life and death for a housewife like me. Fine, I thought. If he wants a divorce, I'll give it to him. I couldn't stay with a man who verbally abused his wife, especially now. I pulled out the divorce papers I always carried with me, handed them to James, and forced a grin. He accepted them gleefully. Now I can finally say goodbye to you. I'll be happy with her, so don't worry, right, Patricia? James said, wrapping his arm around the girl's waist. Her name was Patricia. He sneered at me, and she chimed in, "Take care, Mrs. O. Wait, you're not Mrs. anymore. Take care, ma'am." They both laughed as they sauntered out of the room. But their happiness wouldn't last long. Alone in the hospital room, I burst out laughing. Today was Friday, so the divorce wouldn't be processed until Monday. I couldn't wait for 3 days from now. My name is Nicole Wallace. I'm a 47-year-old housewife. My family runs a modest farm, and I don't have any extraordinary skills, but I'm proud of my vast cooking repertoire. My husband, James, is the same age as me. We were college classmates, both hailing from the countryside, and moved to Florida together. Since we lived alone back then, I'd cook all sorts of dishes for James using vegetables and rice sent from my family. People often said I captured his heart through his stomach, and I knew it was true. James has always been useless at household chores. I've been taking care of him since we started dating, and after we got married, I handled all the housework. Sadly, we never had children, but we enjoyed our life as a couple. We both loved food, and on James's days off, we'd go on drives to savor delicious meals. When we first married, James was kind, but after about 5 years, he became controlling. He never laid a hand on me, but his words grew sharp. "Whose money do you think we're living on?" he'd snap. Those words stung, but I didn't have the energy to fight back. I assumed he wouldn't listen anyway. Being a full-time housewife made me feel inferior, and I couldn't stand up to him. James joined a well-known company after university, but quit after 6 years. He found new jobs quickly, but resigned from them just as fast. Because of this, our income was unstable. We managed by pinching pennies, but we often struggled financially. However, at the company he'd been with for the past 3 years, he seemed to get along with his colleagues. I had faint hopes he might stay there long term. Then, one day, James came home earlier than usual. "I'm home." "I quit my job," he announced. "What?" "Again," I said, shocked. James's eyebrows twitched. I stopped cooking and rushed over to him. "I'm sorry, I was just surprised." "No, welcome back, and you're criticizing me?" "You've gotten bold," James said. His words made me freeze. He was in a foul mood, and if I said the wrong thing, it could get worse. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "As long as you understand," he replied, somewhat placated. He plopped onto the sofa and turned on the TV. I placed a beer and a glass on the table. "Do you want dinner or a bath?" I asked. "Food and alcohol," he grunted. To avoid upsetting James, I played the role of a submissive wife. I once had a strong sense of self, but after 16 years of marriage to James, I rarely showed my true colors. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, James fell asleep, snoring on the sofa. The table was a mess, like a child had eaten there. I cleaned up the spilled beer bottles and food scraps on the floor. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Recalling my girlhood dreams of a happy married life, my true feelings slipped out. I glanced at James, but he showed no signs of waking. Relief washed over me, but dread about continuing this life crept in. Maybe I should consider divorce. I started planning my schedule for the next day, determined to face the issues I'd been avoiding. The next day, James began visiting the employment office and quickly landed another job. While he was job hunting, I went to the city office and signed divorce papers. I wasn't ready to submit them, but having them felt like a safeguard. I hid the signed papers at the bottom of my bag. If James found them, who knows what he'd say or do. "Hey, where'd you go while I was job hunting?" he asked when I got home. "I went to the stationery store to buy some resumes." "Look, I thought you might need them," I said, trying to sound casual. James, who'd gotten home before me, interrogated me suspiciously but cheered up when I handed him the resumes. After receiving them, he said he was going out for drinks with a friend and left. James's new job was at a reputable company with a solid salary and better benefits than any job he'd had before. When he got promoted after 2 years, he celebrated with a drink. I secretly hoped he'd stay there until retirement. His department was in sales, and he started attending more evening events. I enjoyed my brief moments of freedom and gathered energy to greet James with a smile when he returned. One day, I received a call from my mother after a long time. Her excited story stunned me. $10 million? I asked, incredulous. "Yes, $10 million. You know the mountains and land we owned? We don't need them anymore. We had them appraised, and they're worth $15 million. We only need $3 million to enjoy the rest of our lives, so I think you should rethink your life too," she said. My mother was never fond of James. She worried about me, especially after he became controlling, even preventing me from visiting my childhood home. I was shocked by the amount she mentioned. Furthermore, I learned that when she inherited the property from my grandmother, she'd changed the title to my name, so there were no inheritance taxes. "It's better not to tell James, but the final decision is yours," she said before hanging up. I felt torn between the urge to tell James immediately and the desire to live freely with that money. About a week later, I was in a traffic accident. Thankfully, my life wasn't in danger, but I'd need to stay in the hospital for about a week. After storing my valuables in the hospital room drawer, I called James. "I'm sorry, I got injured," I said. "Huh? What about my meals?" James's reaction almost made me laugh. Prioritizing his meals over my injury? "I'll need to be hospitalized for a week." "I'm really sorry, but could you buy your meals elsewhere until then?" "Not even preparing meals for your husband? What a lazy wife." "Oh, wait, I'm coming over now," James said, ending the call abruptly. I planned to tell him about the inheritance that night, but now I thought it might be best to keep quiet. Looking at the tubes attached to me, my intuition told me I was right. "You're useless. Can't even do housework? Let's get a divorce, and you'd better pay me compensation too," James said with a smirk as he entered my hospital room. I was connected to several machines, and a girl I didn't recognize stood beside him. James didn't know my assets totaled $10 million. He should have realized that a divorce under these circumstances was a life and death matter for a housewife like me. "Fine. Here's the divorce papers," I said. I couldn't stay with a man who hurled abuse at his wife in this condition. I handed him the papers I'd kept as a sort of charm. James took them with a smug smile. "With this, I can finally say goodbye to you. I'm going to be happy with her, right, Patricia?" he said, wrapping his arm around the girl's waist. Patricia leaned against him and scoffed at me. "Take care, madam." "Oh, you're not a madam anymore." "Take care, old lady," she said. With those words, they left the room, laughing. But their joy would be short-lived. Alone in my room, I burst out laughing. Today was Friday, so the divorce papers wouldn't be processed until Monday. Oh, I couldn't wait for 3 days from now. Just as I expected, the weekend passed without any contact from James. It was peaceful. I was restless, not used to doing nothing since getting married. I was always busy. Every time I got antsy, the nurses told me to stay calm. Then, on Monday evening, I received a flood of calls from James. I ignored them at first, but after 15 minutes of constant ringing, I answered. "Could you not be so persistent?" I said. "Hey, what's the meaning of this?" James shouted. I couldn't help but laugh. James seemed infuriated by my laughter and started screaming incoherently. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "Don't play dumb." The divorce papers aren't being accepted, are they? James was huffing and puffing on the other end. I chuckled and responded, oh, I'd previously filed a non-acceptance notification. Remember how you used to say, let's get divorced every time we fought? I thought it wouldn't be good if you filed for divorce on a whim during one of our arguments. But I don't need that now. Withdraw it immediately, James demanded. I can't do that until I'm discharged. We need to go through procedures at the municipal office, I said. Then discharge now. Don't be unreasonable. His selfish demands made me laugh even more. He probably wanted to register his marriage with Patricia, whom he'd brought on Friday. By the way, was her name Patricia? She's your mistress, right? Hey, that's rude to Patricia. Apologize. She's my new wife. We're not divorced yet, James, so she's technically your mistress, isn't she? I responded calmly. James made a weird groaning sound. I decided to hit him where it hurt. By the way, you'll hear from my lawyer about the division of assets. That's right, property division. You'd better share properly, you troublemaker, James said, suddenly in high spirits. I wasn't sure why he misunderstood, but I thought. I explained patiently. What fault of mine are you talking about? Just so you know, not being able to do housework because I'm in the hospital doesn't make me at fault. You've abandoned caring for me. If you were a child, it'd be considered neglect, but since you're an adult, you should be able to take care of yourself. That's why it doesn't make me at fault. If I say you're at fault, you're at fault, James insisted. Even a judge would be shocked by his baffling logic. I pictured myself face-palming. Didn't you realize know what's legally defined as grounds for fault? Being at fault means things like infidelity, like having another woman despite having a wife. That's why Patricia's my new wife, and you're no longer of any use to me, so it doesn't apply, right? What are you talking about? Since you were dating her behind my back, it's clearly cheating, I said. James still didn't seem to understand. He was set on believing he was right. Either way, please communicate through my lawyer from now on. Goodbye. Hey, he shouted, but I hung up the phone. He called multiple times, but I ignored him. The next day, another headache-inducing event occurred. Frustrated by nonstop ringing from 9 a.m. in the .m. morning, I answered. James complained like a machine gun. At first, I wasn't sure what he was saying, but piecing it together, it seemed he was upset about not being able to withdraw money from a bank account. If it's a joint account, you should be able to withdraw, I said. Then why were you trying to take money from my account by any chance? I asked. Exactly, James rumbled. You're still in the hospital, and I was going to take care of the money, but the card, won't work. It seemed he didn't understand what I'd said yesterday. When I was scheduled to be hospitalized, I'd called the bank and requested they prevent withdrawals until I was discharged. I could handle it myself after leaving the hospital. It was to stop James, who was reckless with money, from depleting my savings. My decision proved right. It's unthinkable to try withdrawing money from the account of an ex-wife you've divorced, I said. You and my life haven't changed, even if we're getting divorced. Act like a proper wife and listen to me, James insisted. We're not legally divorced yet, but we're already strangers. Why would I do as you say? I don't have money to give to strangers, I said. James was shocked. I'd never resisted him this much before. But he quickly became assertive again. Just do as I say. Send the money now. Pay the compensation for not doing housework. Even though he was academically capable when we met, he seemed to lack common sense now. 18 years into our marriage, it was clear I'd made a poor choice in a partner. James seemed frustrated that I wasn't give in. He'd likely had exhausted his cash and probably dipped into the living expenses I'd left at home. I spoke to him like a child. Listen, I'm no longer your submissive wife, James. We'll settle property division through a lawyer later. What? You're so insolent. I'm coming over right now. Just now, James said, hanging up. I didn't mind if he came, but I'd already asked the nurse's station not to let anyone in except my parents, so it was unlikely he'd make it to my room. James did show up, but as expected, was stopped at the nurse's station. My phone kept ringing, but after ignoring it, it switched to messages, flooding my notification screen. I saved them all as evidence and contacted my lawyer. After a while, it seemed the lawyer had reached James as the messages stopped coming. I thought it was done, but my hopes were dashed. There's a visitor named Julia. Would you like to see her? Yes, please let her in. Julia was a friend who shared my hobbies from my single days when I was young. We'd become close after she responded to my social media posts where I shared my meals dining experiences. We lived nearby and often went out to eat together. After getting married, I couldn't afford to dine out as much to save money, but we kept in touch, meeting regularly for tea and chats. Nicole, are you okay from the injury? Julia asked as she entered. Yes, I'm feeling much better now. Thank you, I replied. Her concern warmed my heart. Since my hospitalization, aside from my parents, only Julia and the hospital staff had shown care for me. Hey, Nicole, things are tough for you right now, aren't they? Julia asked. Huh? Why? I hadn't told anyone but my parents about my situation. How did she know? You know Patricia, the young girl, right? Julia said hesitantly. She's having an affair with your husband, isn't she? What? How do you know? Wait, do you know her? She's actually my niece, Julia replied hesitantly. I was so stunned, I couldn't close my mouth. Who would have thought Julia was Patricia's aunt? The room fell silent. It was the first time there was quiet when Julia was around, and it felt uneasy, unsettling. Patricia suddenly told her parents she's getting married. What's more shocking is her partner is 47 years old. When I saw the photo, it was your husband. I was floored. I've already told my sister. I'm so sorry for all the trouble my niece has caused you, Nicole. Don't apologize, Julia. It's not your fault, I said. Julia looked like she was about to cry. I'm thinking of demanding compensation from Patricia. I can't compromise on that. But if I do, does this mean our relationship will end? Of course not. I want to continue being friends with you, Nicole. I'll make sure Patricia pays compensation. Neither my sister nor I can forgive what she's done. We'll keep a close eye on her. I was grateful for Julia's words. We'd been friends for over 22 years. I didn't want to lose a precious friend because of my terrible husband and his mistress. I scheduled a meeting with them tomorrow, and I'd like you to come with me, Julia said. Of course, I'll be there. I can also provide photos as evidence of their affair. The next day, fresh from being discharged, I prepared for the meeting. I went to a private restaurant room with my lawyer. James and Patricia were already there, indulging in an expensive traditional meal. I was speechless at their audacity. You finally made it. Did you bring the money? Remember, you're paying for this meal, James said without stopping his meal. Please handle the payment yourselves, I said. Patricia continued eating with a smug look. I came here to demand a fair share of the assets from both of you, I said. How long are you going to sulk? You're really unattractive, James remarked rudely. Ignoring him, my lawyer and I presented our evidence. We showed legal documents about liability grounds for divorce, followed by property division papers. Lastly, we revealed photos Julia provided, showing Patricia and James together, as well as Patricia with another man entering a hotel. Wait, what? Hey, Patricia, what is this? James and Patricia were visibly shaken and stopped eating. Just then, Julia made her entrance. I took those photos, she said. Patricia looked confused as to why her aunt was there. Julia looked at them with cold eyes and spoke calmly about being my friend for 22 years and how their actions were despicable. Patricia, you mentioned the baby you're carrying is his. But given your actions, who knows who the father is? No, wait, I said. This was the first time I'd heard about her pregnancy. Judging by her appearance today, one wouldn't guess she was pregnant. However, James's reaction showed he believed her claim. So you're pregnant? In that case, after a DNA test, I'll demand an additional penalty, I said. No, I'm sorry. I lied about the pregnancy. Please forgive me. Patricia admitted, suddenly bowing. Suddenly. She'd been searching for wealthy older men, and James was her target. He bought her designer goods and promised a life where she wouldn't need to work. She believed she'd be a housewife and could have occasional flings. She lied about being pregnant because James showed no signs of divorcing. "I'm truly sorry, but I can't give you anything." "I have don't nothing," she said. "I'll pay Julia," I said. "Patricia, you'll work part-time diligently every month to repay me." "You won't have free time until you've paid me back in full," Julia said firmly. "Oh no," Patricia groaned, looking defeated. Julia said she'd bring Patricia back later for another apology and took her out of the restaurant. James, shocked the entire time, snapped back to reality. "Look, it seems I was deceived. I can't live without you, my wife, Nicole. Can we start over? We still have these divorce papers here. You've always been a housewife, so you can't possibly work now, can you?" he pleaded. I listened with a cold gaze. None of his words didn't move me. I waited for him to finish before responding with a smile. "I can live just fine without you. I'll be taking those divorce papers and filing them shortly. Also, I never mentioned this, but my personal net worth is around $10 million. I can live comfortably without working for the rest of my life. Rest assured." $10 million? Why did you keep such a fortune a secret? James asked, stunned. "I was about to tell you when you started fussing about a divorce. This money is my personal inheritance, so it doesn't count towards marital assets." "It has nothing to do with you," I replied. James looked at me in despair. My lawyer quickly produced documents and a pen for him to sign. We then left and immediately filed for divorce, ending our nearly 22-year marriage. Later, Patricia transferred some money to my account. According to Julia, her mother was furious and made Patricia take a leave from university to work nonstop at a relative's until she paid the compensation. James, disowned by my sister's parents, was told he'd receive no assistance. He reluctantly took out a loan and paid me in one lump sum. It was also revealed he'd been with another woman at a hotel during work hours, so he was fired. Now, he's juggling multiple construction jobs to repay his debts. As for me, even after receiving such a large sum, I didn't know what to spend it on. I donated half to charity and moved to the countryside with the rest. I'm now enjoying a luxurious, single life. I've continued my friendship with Julia. On our days off, we go on drives for food tours and short trips. We both plan to stay single, so I suggested we share a home. Initially hesitant, Julia agreed when I mentioned we could share deliveries and she could join my meals. Moving preparations started the following week. As I packed up my old life, I felt excitement for the new chapter ahead. The thought of living true to myself, free from a toxic marriage, filled me with joy. Julia and I found a beautiful house in the countryside, spacious and surrounded by lush greenery. We loved the tranquility it offered, a stark contrast to the chaos of city life. We set up a cozy living space with a kitchen for our culinary adventures. As we settled in, our days were filled with laughter and good food. We explored local markets, tried new recipes, and started a small vegetable garden. The simplicity of our routine brought immense satisfaction. Julia and I grew closer, sharing not just our home, but our dreams and plans for the future. Despite the hardships I faced, I realized my life had taken a turn for the better. The toxic relationship with James was history, and I'd found a true friend in Julia. Together, we built a life filled with love, respect, and support. One sunny afternoon, as we enjoyed a picnic in our garden, I reflected on my journey. I'd gone from feeling trapped and undervalued to experiencing freedom and contentment. I discovered strength I didn't know I had and learned the importance of self-worth. The lessons from my marriage and divorce taught me resilience. I realized happiness comes from within, and surrounding yourself with supportive people makes all the difference. Julia and I often talked about our future plans. We dreamed of traveling, exploring new cuisines, and maybe starting a small business together. The possibilities seemed endless, and for the first time in years, I felt truly optimistic. Life in the countryside was peaceful and fulfilling. The fresh air, the sound of birds, and the beauty of nature provided a perfect backdrop for our new beginning. I'd found purpose and joy in the simple things, a feeling I treasured deeply. As days turned to weeks, then months, Julia and I thrived. Our bond grew stronger, and our friendship became the foundation of our happiness. Looking back, leaving James was the best decision I ever made. It allowed me to rediscover myself and build a life filled with love, laughter, and true companionship. Julia and I had created a haven where we could be ourselves, free from judgment, and filled with joy. In the end, I learned that life's challenges often lead to unexpected blessings. My journey taught me the importance of self-respect, the power of friendship, and the beauty of living authentically. I was excited for the future, knowing that with Julia by my side, anything was possible. I was determined to live joyfully and true to myself from now on.